Hi everyone, it's Rayvon from Love Lola. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making the Zafiro by Shamballa. She labels it as intermediate. It is a super cute bag. It's really classy looking. If you guys are ready to get started, let's go. Okay, so we should have all of our pattern pieces cut out. Let's go over a few things. There's going to be a few items that are going to be needing marks. So your exterior main panel back is going to need a mark if you're choosing to use a logo badge. I haven't marked it yet because I am going to be getting some stabilizer fused on here, and we can't do that until we complete the panel for the back. So for now, we're just going to put that to the side. I've gone ahead and stabilized my gussets. And then on the gussets, you can go ahead and mark on the back where you're going to be putting your snaps. Now, I've taken my pieces and tried to kind of line them up so that you can see what the bag looks like assembled. I know that always helps me when I'm picking out my colors to know what pieces go where. So hopefully this will help you out. Obviously, we've got our gusset pieces. This area pocket side band, that's going to be the little piece that goes on the side. If you are able to mark on the back of your fabric, I recommend you do so because a lot of these pieces have slants that you barely can notice, but it's there. And if you put it on incorrectly, it would mess everything up. So when you cut this out, that's going to be the piece that goes on the right. So you can see I've marked that. And then when you mirror it, that's going to be your piece. That's going to be on the left. So I've marked that. Also, a piece that peeps out from behind, that is your main panel section 3. Okay, so that little piece that shows, just so you know, when you're getting your vinyl choices or your fabric choices together, that's what's going to be peeping out on the side, right behind this flap. Right behind the flap and next to the pocket piece. The main panel section 2 is what's going to be right above your flap. And then section 1 is what's going to be at the very top. So you know how when you have a recessed zipper, you can see that material at the very top of your bag? Basically, she's doing the same thing for the gusset. So that's what that little lining gusset contrast is. So that's going to be the color that's going to be peeping up from the inside of your bag. Same thing for the lining contrast band. That's going to be peeping up as well. Now go ahead and make sure that you mark all of your center pieces because it's gonna need to be done. So get all of those midpoints marked. Oh, and the flap strip obviously is the piece that's going to hang over the flap. I accidentally doubled the length of that, so just ignore that. I am going to be using Pelon 70 as my stabilizer for my base for the bottom. Now we can go ahead and mark for our exterior pocket center where we're going to be putting that snap. Okay, so I actually went ahead and interfaced this with some Emeline Heavy just because this vinyl is a little bit thinner than what I would want for my front main panels. Now go ahead and install the female side of your magnetic snap according to the instructions. And I did cut a piece of stabilizer to put on the back. Now take your exterior pocket, the lower band, and you want to draw that margin that's on your pattern piece. It's 1/4 of an inch. So I just measured down 1/4 of an inch and drew a line on all 3 sides. And then I made a little snip in the corners, not all the way down to the line, but almost. And now we're just going to fold this over at the line We're not folding to the line, we're folding at the line. Now we're going to match up our mid pieces. Our mid pieces and the bottom, get those aligned. If you want, you can add a little bit of double-sided tape under here as well. And now we're going to go sew down, across, and back up at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, once we get that attached, we can go ahead and trim some of this material in the back away to help trim down our seam allowance. Just make sure that you leave at least 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, okay? So,
bye, Mom.
Bye, baby.
I'm gonna close the door for you.
You can leave the door open, sweetie. Now we're going to grab our side pieces. Okay, and I have my left side and my right side. We're going to pin them together and then sew them at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now you're just going to press this to the side. So your seam allowance is going to be going behind this side piece. And you're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to be doing it to both sides. Now grab your exterior pocket lining and we're going to place it on top of the panel we just worked on, right sides together. We're going to get them clipped together and then we're going to sew them at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. Flip it over. Smooth out your seams. Pin it, and then we're going to go and do a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, let's set this aside. Grab your main panel pieces, section 4 and section 3. They should both be right side facing up right now. And then we're going to place them right sides touching. Pin them together and sew it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and we're going to fold it, and we want our seam allowance to be going towards the bottom. And once you've got that finger pressed, we're going to go and top stitch, and we're going to be top stitching along the bottom lining piece. Yeah, baby? Okay, now grab your exterior pocket center. Match up those midpoints. And carefully lining up the bottom and the sides, we're going to pin this together, and then we're going to go and sew it together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, let's put this aside for now. Grab your flap. And we want to bend the inside portion of our flap in. And it's not exactly 1/4 of an inch. So for this, I am going to just cut on this line. So the next time I make this bag, I'll just print out a new flap. But that's the easiest way that I can think for me to make sure that I get this correct. So that's what I'm going to do. And now I'm going to align it on the bottom. And draw that line. Oh, look, I didn't finish cutting this out. Okay, and now we're going to cut a few notches in those corners. Okay, and use either some glue or some double-sided tape to get those pieces folded over. Okay, and now we're going to do just like before and bend on the line. Now grab your front flat panel and we're going to place this right on top. I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape just to hold it in place. Okay, and we are going to line up the bottom edge of both pieces. I'm going to add a little piece of tape to the side. I don't like the way it's not sitting where it needs to. Okay, now we're going to sew along the inner part of this little flat piece at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once we have that attached, we can do like before and cut this back panel so that we can decrease our seam allowance. Now I've already placed my interfacing on. I had already placed my interfacing on that original piece, but actually we should be doing it now. This is when we should have our interfacing attached. I don't think it really matters that much though, so we're good. And use your pattern piece to find where we're going to be putting our bridge. I'm actually going to cut a piece of Pellon to help stabilize that just a little bit. You should have your bridge connected at this point. Grab your back flat panel. Use your pattern to mark where you're going to be placing your magnetic snap. And go ahead and get that installed. If you would like to leave your edges exposed, then at this point, you would just place these right sides together. And you would sew it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then you would go back and trim it down to 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And if you would like, you can apply edge coat. I'm going to be sewing mine where there are no exposed edges. So I'm going to line up from the mid piece and pin all the way around. Let's go sew around the side, the bottom, and back up to the other side at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. We are not sewing at the top. I went ahead and trimmed my flap down, my seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now I'm going to turn it right side out. I hope y'all can hear me. I'm talking soft because my baby's asleep. It's late. Okay, now I like my flaps to be super stiff. So I cut out some Pellon 70 from the pattern piece, the flap stabilizer, the flap interfacing piece. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to go and top stitch along the side, the bottom, back up, and then we're also going to baste along that top, all at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Right. Cute. Feels good. Okay, now let's grab our flap strips. There should be one in our outside fabric and in our lining. I folded and doubled up the length of that, so don't be like me. Don't do that. And we basically just want to mark a line down the center. So I just laid them next to each other. and use my ruler to get that line marked on both. Okay, now you can use glue if you want to, or you can use double-sided tape, or you can use pins. We're just going to bend that in towards that line. All right, once we have that done, we're going to place these two pieces wrong sides touching and get them pinned together. Once you've got these pinned together, head over to the machine and sew along the long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, let's slide this through. Get in there. There we go. Bring it to the top, align it, and then we're going to go and base that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Oh, that's pretty. Okay. Grab your main panel and line that up right on the center. It's actually going to want to snap automatically. Okay, now when my snap connects, my flat piece is like 1/8 of an inch taller than the side piece. I'm going to attach mine at the length of this and just trim off the excess up there. I feel like that would probably be the smartest thing to do. Yeah. All right, now find section 2. There we go. And we are going to lay it where they are right sides touching each other. Join it from the center point. And then we're going to pin across the top. Let's go get this sewn together at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. All right, we want our seam allowance to stay going up towards the top. Bend that over, finger press it. And now we're going to head back to the machine and we're going to top stitch along this top panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to grab our section 1. Make sure that you have it right side up. It doesn't seem like, it seems like it's, you know, straight up and down, but it's not. It's got a slight curve to it. Now we're going to take it and we're going to place them right sides touching each other. We're going to get it pinned together. And let's go sew that at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Our seam allowance is going up behind the piece that we just added. And now we're going to go and top stitch along our newest piece at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once we've got that done, let's work on our back. Go ahead and grab section 1, 2, and the main panel. Take your section 2. Lay these two pieces right side facing each other and pin. Sew it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure that your seam allowance is staying facing up behind section number 3. Behind section number 2. Okay, and then head over to your machine and top stitch on grab section 1. Make sure that you have it facing the correct side up. Place it right side down, matching it in the center, and get it pinned together. Now we're gonna go and get that stitched together at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and let's push that piece up towards the top. The seam allowance is behind this last piece that we just added. And now let's go and top stitch along this piece at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now let's move along to our gusset. You should have some sort of interfacing on your gusset at this point. If you don't, go ahead and get some on. I did foam, my headliner foam, and I used this to get it on there. Use the markings from your pattern to mark where you're going to be putting your snaps, and go ahead and follow the instructions from the manufacturer to get those installed. Okay, now that we have our main panels assembled all of the way, we can go ahead and get our stabilizer added. Whatever you're using, get it attached. I'm going to be using this foam. I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. Let's see if these match. Whenever I have panels that I have to match up that are assembled, I always have a fear that they're not going to match. Almost. A little off on the top. Right there. I think it's because, oh, I know why it's pulling right there. I'm going to be holding off on adding my stabilizer to my bottom piece just because I'm going to be using Pelon 70 for that, and I'm just going to slide that in at the very end. All right, and I just realized that I doubled my flap strip, and I did not need to do that. So I'm going to cut off the extra that shouldn't be there. There we go. That's where it's supposed to be. Okay, and also I decided that I don't like the strap hardware that I have. I just don't like the way it looks for this. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to be adding some invisible connectors instead. And I'm going to use this since I have it. Right? Put it right there. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Okay, so you should have already marked where you're going to be doing your, adding your connector. If you didn't, or if it got covered up by foam like mine did, just mark it again. Grab a water erasable marker, and I am lining up my ruler with this line to make sure that I'm making my line straight. Make sure that you're careful when you're cutting your slits, because on this, I was originally going to do all 3/4 of an inch cuts, but I wound up cutting a little bit too far on the front, and so it left a hole. It has to fit, you know, precisely. So I had to go and remake some new connectors at 1 inch long. So just be careful when you make those slits that you're being very precise. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is cut your slit, and then you're going to place your connector piece wrong side up and just slide it in that hole. Make sure that your slit is big enough, because if it's too tight, it's going to start to pucker. So just play around with it. Make sure that it's not puckering. Okay, once you feel good about that, we're going to head over to the machine, and we're going to top stitch a 1/8 of an inch over this strap right here. So you're going to be going through your strap connector and through your base. Once you have that connected, you're going to grab, I'm using a triangular ring. You can use a D-ring, an O-ring, whatever hardware that you want to get your, that you're going to be attaching your strap to. And you're just going to feed it through there. And then you're going to take this piece and shove it back up in that hole. And you can adjust how much of this shows by how tight you pull this towards the back. So do try to be mindful of that and make a match. See how this one's pulled pretty tightly, so it's really small. This one I stopped earlier, so it's bigger. So I'm going to keep pulling it because I definitely want those to match. See? Much better. Okay, and once you get it in, again, just play around with it. Make sure it doesn't look like it's pulling or anything. It looks fine to me. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take all of this in the back and push it down. And when you push it down, that's going to stop that top from being able to show. That's what makes it invisible. Okay. Now I am going to mark for my rivet. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going down probably about 2/8 of an inch and centered. So this is a great alternative if the pattern that you're using calls for some kind of strap hardware and you don't have anything on hand. Bam, there you go. If you're going to be adding a label, go ahead and get that attached. I will be doing piping for my bag, but for the sake of time on this video, I'm not going to be including it in this video. But I do have a link in the description box of this video to the video where I will be showing how to do piping, okay? Okay, so let's grab our front piece and our bottom piece. If you're going to be adding purse feet, go ahead and grab your bottom pattern piece and the pattern and mark where you're going to be installing them. Did I do that wrong? Spoiler alert, I did. I totally did that wrong. Once you've got that done, grab one of your main panels. And you are going to be laying your bottom piece face down so right sides are touching. Starting at our mid marks, we're going to get them pinned together. Okay, let's go get that sewn together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let's keep our seam allowance going towards the bottom. Finger press it. And now we're going to go and top stitch along our bottom panel piece at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now let's repeat it to the other side. Let's grab our back panel. And we're going to lay that piece so that they're right sides touching each other. Line them up at that midpoint and get them pinned together. Let's go and sew this together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. As you can see, I went ahead and added my top stitching while I was over there. Now let's get our gusset attached. We're going to grab our gusset. Find the midpoint and match it up to the midpoint of the bottom piece. And their right sides touching. And then we're going to match up the top of each side. There we go. And now we're going to go and match up our side pieces all the way around and get them pinned together. I'm going to add a few notches just around my curve. To help the process. All right, and now we're gonna go and get this sewn together. I think I'm gonna do it with the gusset facing up. This is me struggling because I do my piping blindly on my industrial machine because I don't have a foot for piping. So and my walking foot, it's horrible. Piping is a nightmare for me on this machine. So if anyone has any recommendations for feet that you can put, because I need help I would really appreciate it. I can't get close enough to my piping because of the way my foot is. All right, once you've got it done, you can check inside and make sure that everything looks good. If it does, then repeat that whole process to your other side. All right, moment of truth. Let's turn it out. Oh, this is pretty. I like it. Okay, so I am going to be adding a zipper pocket to my lining. For the sake of time, I am not going to be adding it on this video, but if you look in the instructions, there is a link for making a zipper pocket. I'm going to make a quick little slip pocket. I've cut it, what did I do? I cut it 7 inches by 12 inches. I'm going to fold it so that it is right sides touching. And I'm going to pin around. Okay, I'm going to go sew around the 3 edges that are open, but I'm going to leave about, I don't know, maybe about 3 inches to turn it out. 2 or 3 inches. All right, I'm going to trim my ends down just a little bit, especially on that corner. Not going to trim where we left that opening. Turn it out. And just tuck that in. And you pull it, it's going to want to tuck in by itself. Okay, let's grab our little piece that we did earlier. See if we need to trim it down a little bit. And the answer is yes. I drew a line down the middle of that vinyl and added double-sided tape to kind of help me get that situated correctly. And I'm going to place this at the halfway mark. Okay, now I'm going to go and top stitch on that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've grabbed my other lining piece. And I'm going to place this down 1 1/4 inch and centered. All right, now I'm going to go and get this stitched on. I'm going to be sewing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance around the side, the bottom, and back up to the top. All right, we can set this aside. Oh, I did go ahead and add some rivets just for extra security. Now grab your zipper tape. It should be 16 inches long. And we're going to box our ends like I just did there. All you're going to do is pinch it and let it naturally fold over. Grab a needle and thread, or you can go to your machine and get a few stitches at it just to make it stay. Okay, if you haven't already made your mark, grab your lining main panel and use that to make 2 marks where your zipper is going to start and end. Now grab your lining that has the slip pocket, and your lining is right side up and your zipper is also right side up. And you're going to line it up right at that mark. Now when you get to that mark that you made, you're going to leave the clamp there. And then you're going to just Just slowly pull it out of the way. I mean, you're going to just gently push it out of the way. You don't want to tug it. You don't want it to get wonky or anything. Just kind of move it out of the way. And now we're going to go and sew across the top at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now grab your lining contrast band, one of them. Make sure that you have it the right side facing up. There is a slight angle. And we're going to find the midpoint and lay them right sides touching each other. And then we're going to get them pinned together. Okay, and now we're going to go and sew this at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I've unzipped my zipper to make this easier. Now we're going to press our seam allowance so that it's going down behind our lining. And then we're going to go and do a top stitch on top of our lining, right underneath that zipper. And we're going to do that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now grab your other lining piece. And we're going to do the same thing that we just did. We want our lining right side facing up. We want our zipper also right side facing up. Oh, look, I didn't mark it. Okay, we're going to place the edge of the zipper right there on that mark. Pin it. Okay, just like before, we're going to just let it kind of drag off to the side. And then we're going to go and sew that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, let's grab our other lining contrast band. Make sure that it is right side up. Okay, and then lay it right sides facing each other. Match up those midpoints. And get them attached. All right. There we go. I went ahead and added my top stitch under my zipper, okay? I like that. That's different. It's kind of like a recessed zipper without having to do all the recessing, huh? I always love an easier way to do something. I like that. Good job, Sammy. Okay, so let's get our gusset. Grab one of our gusset pieces. We're going to lay it right side facing up. Grab one of our lining gusset contrast pieces. Make sure that you have it the correct way. There we go. There's a slight angle to that one as well, so just make sure you have it correctly. We're going to place them right sides together, get them pinned, and then head over to the machine and sew them at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Fold it so that the seam allowance is going down. And then add a top stitch right along the lining at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then go ahead and repeat the same thing to your other gusset piece. All right, now it's time to assemble the lining, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing that we did to assemble the outer parts of the bag. So let's get it. Place your bottom lining right sides touching with one of your lining pieces. Clip it, sew it together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Turn it over, top stitch it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then repeat it to the other side of the lining. Okay, now we're going to get our gussets attached about the same way that we did before. The only difference is when we start sewing our gusset to our main lining pieces, we're going to start at 1/4 of an inch, but then we're going to increase it about right here. Start increasing it to 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. And then when you get back to the other side at the very top, decrease it back to 1/4. That's just going to help our lining not be saggy. When you get to the curved part of your gusset, if you feel like it's scrunching up just a little bit too much, you can always just trim down a little bit of that extra material so that it fits just fine, and pin it. Just make sure on one of these pieces that you leave about a 6-inch gap on one of the sides so that you can turn your bag out later, okay? It doesn't matter which one, but just leave 6 inches on the side so we can turn it out. Okay, now once I've got that sewn, I went ahead and trimmed down my seam allowance, starting about 1 inch from the top. I trimmed it down to about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I did not trim the area where we're going to be pulling the bag through. And also, again, I left the top inch a little bit longer. That way when we do our top stitching, we can open that up and keep it really smooth. Hey guys, we're almost done. Let's see. Okay, we are going to be inserting the exterior of our bag right side out into the lining, wrong side out. And make sure that our zipper pocket is going towards the back of the bag. Okay. I'm going to line up my mid pieces first. Okay. Then I'm going to line up my mid pieces on my gussets. Then I'm going to match up my mid pieces everywhere else, or my seams. Make sure that you're opening them up. Okay. To help the seams lay flatter. And you're going to match up the midpoint of those 4 seams. Pin it. Okay, now we're going to go and sew this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, as you can see, I have gone ahead and pinned entirely around the top of my bag. Now I'm going to be top stitching at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're almost done. Oh, this is so cute. I love this. Yes. Look at that. Beautiful. Perfect for my phone. I love this vinyl. Okay, I'll just sit here and keep talking about it. Okay, what I want to do, what are we doing? Oh, I know what. Okay, so I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more sturdy. See how it's kind of falling in? Because I use a headliner foam. And usually I always interface all of my pieces with Emmeline Heavy. And today I wanted to try something different and see what would happen if I only used foam as my interfacing. And I see that this is what happens. It's fine for a slouchier type bag, but for this bag, I want it to be stiff. I want it to feel expensive. So what I did was I used the interfacing piece. And I cut it just a little bit smaller. I took probably about an inch off the top and brought the sides in about half of an inch, and I can't talk. Cut the sides about half of an inch shorter on each side, and I'm going to be using some beacon glue to get that. I'm going to just put it in through this hole, and also I still have to add my bottom piece, remember? Because I decided that I wanted to use this as my bottom piece. So I'm going to go ahead and get this inserted, and I'm also going to stick these in as well. All right, I've got my stabilizer in, and it feels fantastic. Okay, now I'm going to go and get that hole that we turned it out through closed. All right, let's get our straps made. Now, the instructions call for 28 inches long by 4 inches wide. That will give you a 1-inch strap. Oh, man. I am not going to be making my strap 1 inch. Mine is going to actually be 3/4 inch. Because I just went to my hardware stash and I don't have any 1-inch swivel hooks. This is what I have. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to be using 3/4 inch. So therefore I cut my strap to be 3 inches wide. As you can see, I've drawn a line down the middle. Okay, and now I am just going to fold it in towards the middle. Fold it in towards the middle again. And then fold it to meet on the sides. They don't quite touch in the middle. I leave a little bit of space just so that it's not overcrowded when I bend it over. I really love the feel of this vinyl. It almost feels kind of like upholstery. I like it. I think I'm going to order some more ASAP before you guys order it and she doesn't have any more. You're not going to let that happen again. You got me once. You're not going to get me again. You know what they say? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay, once I've got my handle, I don't know if you can see this in the light, but this vinyl is so pretty. Once I've got it all pinned, I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to stitch it at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my other one. Okay, so I decided that I wanted to put strap ends on mine. So if you're going to be doing that, just go ahead and follow the instructions for your hardware to get those on. And now I am going to be adding my swivel hook. So we want it to bend this way. Okay. So with the bottom side of your hardware up, you're going to run it through your swivel hook that's facing down. And then you're going to bend it over about 1 inch. I'm just eyeing it. I would say maybe 1 1/4 inch. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it right side up so I can make sure that I'm getting this hole exactly where I want it. And I'm just eyeballing it, and I'm just going to get it where it's between here and here. So just at the halfway mark. Okay. Get my rivets in there. All right. All right, y'all, we've made it to the finish line. Last thing, get our zipper in on, and then we're done. Oh, I gotta fix this. All right, so make sure that your zipper is not twisted. I thought that I made sure that mine wasn't, but clearly I didn't. All right, we're just gonna put that on there. Put that in there. All right. There we go. Okay. Go ahead and get your zipper in installed if you're using one. All right, that's it. We're done. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video or you found it helpful in any way, please don't forget to hit the like button. If you do make this bag, I would love to see it. Tag me on social media. See you guys next time. Bye.